made their way to a key housing area of government institutions which they plan to occupy. We will bring you the latest on this on the show today.
Also on World DNA, all updates coming in from West Asia. Israel launches air attacks on Lebanon, killing a dozen people at least. And this even as officials claimed that they were nearing an agreement on a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah. We will be bringing you the latest on that front as well. This is World DNA. Let's start with the headlines.
Lebanon says Israeli strikes pummeled South Beirut, killing 31 people. Israeli military says about 25 Hezbollah targets hit across the country.
For PTI protest rally in Pakistan's capital, wife of former Prime Minister Imran Khan heads towards D-Chowk with her convoy. Hours after Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi warns of consequences if they enter the high security zone.
Donald Trump says he intends to impose sweeping tariffs on goods from China, Mexico and Canada in a bid to crack down on illegal drug trade and immigration. Vows to impose additional 10% tariff on China.
Western nations and Russia cross swords at a chemical arms control meeting, with US saying it is appalled by Moscow's alleged use of a banned riot control gas in Ukraine.
North Korea is expanding a key weapons manufacturing complex that assembles short-range missiles used by Russia and Ukraine. Researchers at a US-based think tank reveal based on satellite images.
Indian capital's air quality deteriorates to the severe zone yet again after briefly improving a day before as wind speeds drop significantly. Supreme Court suggests reopening schools but refuses to relax curbs.
West Ham United overcome Newcastle United at St James Park in the English Premier League. The victory eases the pressure on Julian Lopetegui. At least one police officer was killed and 119 people injured in Pakistan as supporters of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan clashed with security forces.
And this is while they were trying to enter the capital city of Islamabad. In response to the call for a march on Parliament for a sit-in demonstration, this was the action which was taken against the PTI supporters. Islamabad is under lockdown for the past 2 days. Highways to the city have been barricaded. Major roads have been blocked with shipping containers. And local TV footage from last night shows police firing tear gas canisters at Imran Khan's supporters who were pelting them with stones and bricks.
Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi said the security forces showed extreme restraint in confronting the protesters, some of whom he said had fired live rounds while police only used rubber bullets and fired tear gas canisters. But Khan's party accused the government of using excessive violence to block the protesters and said hundreds of workers and leaders had been arrested. Naqvi said the government had offered Khan's party permission to hold a sit-in protest at an open field in Islamabad's outskirts, adding that the party leaders took this offer to Khan at his prison cell, but they haven't yet heard back on it.
Naqvi cleared that the protesters will not be allowed to reach outside the parliament, warning that the government will be forced to use extreme steps if they did not budge, including imposing curfew or calling in the army troops.
However, hours thereafter, Bushra Bibi, Imran Khan's wife, insisted on progressing, claiming that the party workers are not willing to compromise on any settlement that does not include reaching D-Chowk. According to sources cited in the local news, Khan had agreed to an alternative location, but Bushra Bibi refused.
Meanwhile, the government has bolstered security in view of the arrival of President of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, who will be on a 3-day visit to the country. Israeli strikes pummeled Lebanon on Monday with at least 31 people killed across the country over the past day.
Lebanon's health ministry listed the casualty toll in cities in the east, south and near Beirut.
Now, most deaths were reported in the south. The Israeli military said that it had struck approximately 25 terror targets belonging to Hezbollah. According to reports, the Iran-backed Hezbollah also unleashed one of its biggest rocket salvos on Sunday, firing 250 missiles on Israel.
Meanwhile, the White House has put out that a ceasefire deal between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah is close as the negotiations are ongoing.
An Israeli official has said the Security Cabinet is preparing to decide whether to accept a proposed ceasefire. The United States, European Union and United Nations have all pushed in recent days for a truce in the long-running hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. France, which alongside Washington has spearheaded efforts towards a truce, has reported significant progress in ceasefire talks. France has urged Israel and Hezbollah to seize this opportunity and agree on a ceasefire as soon as possible.
Italy, which holds the rotating presidency of the G7 group of nations, has also voiced optimism about a Lebanon ceasefire. The group of 7 foreign ministers held a meeting hosted by Italy, where they also discussed the ICC's arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Hamas military chief. The Italian FM urged G7 nations to have a unified stance.
This comes as an intensive Israeli military operation on Gaza's besieged north enters its 50th day. UNRWA officials say the situation is getting worse by the hour and remaining residents are left scavenging among the rubble for food.
Now, on the other battlefront, Moscow and Kyiv have escalated their use of long-range missiles after the United States gave Ukraine approval to use the weapons against Russia.
Well, our next story explains how long-range Western missiles changed the calculus in the region. Take a look.
The battlefield is ablaze. Ukraine fires Western-supplied long-range missiles deep into Russian territory. Russia responds with a hypersonic strike on Dnipro using its deadly Oreshnik missile. Russia says its air defenses had shot down 8 ballistic missiles fired by Ukraine without saying what kind of missiles were used or where they were shot down. Each missile is dragging the conflict into dangerous new territory. Moscow says the Oreshnik missile isn't just fast, it's unstoppable. It flies at 10 times the speed of sound, carrying multiple warheads to strike separate targets, as seen in this grainy video.
Well, I would say Putin had to somewhat pretend to escalate. However, he's also shown what Russia is still capable of. And so, of course, the Western powers have taken note, even though, of course, the question is, will they try to call his bluff?
More alarming still, Ukrainian intelligence suggests the Oreshnik, which means hazelnut tree, could strike deep into NATO territory, reaching Poland within 12 minutes and the UK within 20 minutes of launch.
It appears dangerous, but I think we should also not let ourselves be intimidated and cowed by these threats from Russia and by its escalatory actions. That's precisely what Putin wants. He wants to really cow the Western countries and the Ukrainians into saying, okay, we give up.
Russia boasts its experimental hypersonic missile cannot be intercepted. Ukraine is worried and is demanding advanced air defense systems from the West to shield itself from Russian missiles. Western nations now face an acute dilemma. While Ukraine urgently seeks advanced air defense systems like Patriot and THAAD, NATO countries hesitate to deploy these sophisticated platforms. Their reluctance stems from concerns about exposing cutting-edge military technology to Russian and Chinese intelligence analysis. Unlike Russia, which flaunts its new weapons, the West traditionally keeps them under wraps. The race to gain a battlefield edge intensifies as both sides prepare for a potential shift in US policy, with Donald Trump's impending inauguration in January. For NATO, this escalation underlines the growing urgency to balance support for Ukraine against the risk of direct confrontation with Moscow. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
US prosecutors have dropped the criminal case against President-elect Donald Trump, citing his return to the presidency following his successful 2024 campaign.
Now, Trump is accused of seeking to overturn the 2020 election defeat. Prosecutors working with special counsel said that a long-standing US Department policy prohibits taking criminal action against a sitting president.
In a 6-page motion to dismiss the 2020 election interference case, prosecutors said that the legal counsel of the Department of Justice asked them to drop the case. And this is a major win for US President-elect Donald Trump, who had 4 criminal cases against him. Trump was convicted in a New York case and awaits developments in the other cases. Hitting out at the Democrats, Donald Trump has hailed the decision and said that the cases were empty and lawless and a waste of taxpayers' money.
Trump's team has called it a victory for the rule of law. His communications director, Stephen Schunk, said that the dismissal ends unconstitutional federal cases against the president-elect. And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani tells us why the special counsel dropped the federal charges against the president-elect Donald Trump. Listen to this.
Special counsel Jack Smith dropped the federal charges against President-elect Donald Trump because of a long-standing Department of Justice policy that prohibits the prosecution of a sitting president. Now, this policy was adopted during the Watergate era and was intended to ensure that a president can perform their constitutional duties without being hindered by legal cases. Smith's team argued that while the evidence against Donald Trump still remains very strong and their commitment to abiding by the law is there, Trump's re-election creates a legal barrier for prosecution once he takes office on January 20th.
Susan also explains the broader implications of dropping these federal charges against Donald Trump.
The dismissal is a significant victory for Donald Trump and his long-standing claims that these charges were quote-unquote politically motivated, as he said time and again. It also highlights the constitutional protection for a sitting president, ensuring that they can fulfill their constitutional duties without legal battles. Trump's re-election really amplifies this decision, showing that voters ultimately rejected allegations against him and really sided with the message that he was putting out, and that was fighting against what he called partisan attacks.
Shifting our focus now, North Korea is expanding a key weapons manufacturing unit that assembles a type of short-range missile used by Russia against Ukraine.
Now, researchers in the United States have reached a conclusion based on satellite images. As per reports, the facility known as the February 11th plant is part of the Ryongsong Machine Complex, located in the eastern coast of North Korea, is known to produce the Hwasong-11 class of solid-fuel ballistic missiles. The report also suggests that the images show additional assembly buildings intended to home workers of the facilities.
Ukrainian officials have said that these munitions, known as the KN-23 in the West, have been used by Russia in the ongoing war, a charge refused by both Moscow and Pyongyang. However, in September, North Korea tested a version of the KN-23 with a 4.5-ton warhead. Both the nations signed a mutual defense treaty at a summit in June and have pledged to boost their military and strategic ties.
Taiwan has changed its air raid warning threshold, and this comes in response to China's People's Liberation Army's tactics. The move, however, raises concerns that the decision leaves the public with less time to take shelter during cross-strait conflict.
Now, earlier the island would issue air raid alerts if PLA's aircraft or vessels came within 70 nautical miles of the Taiwanese coast. But now that threshold has been changed to 24 nautical miles in the recent years. The change raised questions when RW News reported that the shift is a problem for the residents of the island, as change in the threshold could leave people with just 3 minutes to seek shelter during an air raid.
According to a military source, the previous standard was outdated and did not align with present conditions, and adhering to old standards would require the air raid sirens to be issued frequently. However, experts were skeptical about the change. While acknowledging the logic behind the change, they cautioned about the potential risks for public safety. They say if PLA warplanes reach 24 nautical miles contiguous zone, it would take them only 3 minutes to enter Taiwan's airspace and launch attacks. And in just 3 minutes, how will the public respond to the emergency? In recent years, the PLA has ramped up drills and patrols in the strait as tensions between the two sides escalate. Now, despite weekly protests, Parliament has convened in the country of Georgia.
The Parliament came into session 1 month after a disputed election that divided the nation. Earlier in the day, lawmakers from the ruling Georgian Dream Party convened the first session of Parliament after claiming victory in the October 26th election. But opposition leaders boycotted the opening session.
Time and again, the opposition has accused Georgia's poll body and the Dream Party of electoral fraud. Protesters and opposition lawmakers have rallied in the capital, Tbilisi, week after week, contesting the election result and demanding an investigation.
On the eve of the Parliament session, opposition supporters took to the streets again. Along with opposition party leaders, they pitched tents outside the Parliament as well.
Our country is like on a verge of like collapsing, so we really want to defend it because we love our country. We want to live in this country. We want to make it better. So this is why we're here. There is no other way, and we will not let the oligarch to steal our present and our future as well.
Now, the demonstrations continued till Monday morning as leaders of the ruling party entered the Parliament. Protesters chanted slogans and reportedly called them slaves.
The ruling party has repeatedly been accused of being pro-Russia. On the other hand, the opposition parties have a pro-European stance. Georgia's geography and its history forms the foundation of a growing political and identity divide in the Eurasian country. Georgia has historically been a part of the Soviet Union until its collapse in 1991. More recently, the country has taken drastic measures to step out of the shadow and embrace a more European identity. But this move has the country split.
An brawl erupted in the Serbian Parliament as tensions rose between the ruling coalition and the opposition over a roof collapse of a train station.
A member from the ruling party stood up with a sign that read, "You have blood on your hands," suggesting that the ruling coalition is to be blamed for the train station disaster. Take a look at this report. Well, this year's Thanksgiving turkeys, Peach and Blossom, were pardoned at the White House.
This particular pardon is significant as it marks the last one in Joe Biden's administration. The chairman of the National Turkey Federation, a second-generation farmer, John Zimmerman, said that it was during a news conference that Zimmerman's 9-year-old son, Grant, revealed the turkeys' names.
I'm a second-generation turkey farmer, and my family has been raising turkeys for over 70 years. Though this year is truly special because we have the unique responsibility of bringing two very important turkeys to the White House for the 77th Annual National Thanksgiving Turkey Presentation.
Zimmerman further added that Peach and Blossom will be retiring to Farm America in Waukesha, Minnesota, where they'll be well looked after and serve as agricultural ambassadors for years to come. This year's ceremony marks the 77th Annual National Thanksgiving Turkey Presentation, continuing a cherished holiday tradition dating back to the Truman administration.
Peach and Blossom will return to Farm America, where they will enjoy well-deserved retirement on our farm in southern Minnesota, a region celebrated as the global...
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. Lots more on the other side when we come back. A report on the air quality in the Indian national capital, which deteriorates to the severe zone yet again as schools in New Delhi are preparing to reopen despite pollution concerns.
Also on the other side, Bangladesh is witnessing a wave of protests as the capital is on edge. Demonstrations erupted in several areas for various reasons. We'll get you a full report on this on the other side.
Will Namibia be the next country in Southern Africa to kick out a political party in power since independence? Namibians ponder over that dilemma as they gear up for the general elections. Ugandan opposition figure Kizza Besigye appears in a military court in Uganda days after he was reported missing during a book launch in Kenya. His wife fears he will not get justice in the military court. And in Cape Town, it's a baboon fiesta. Hundreds of Chakma baboons roam Cape Town's seaside village of Simon's Town, creating a nuisance. That's this week on Wild of Africa, at these times on WION. Wild is one.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Lots lined up for you on this side of the show. Let's get started with the headlines first.
Lebanon says Israeli strikes pummel South Beirut, killing 31 people nationwide. Israeli military says about 25 Hezbollah targets hit across the country.
PTI protest rally in Pakistan's capital. Wife of former Prime Minister Imran Khan heads for D-Chowk with her convoy hours after Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi warns of consequences if they enter the high security zone.
Zelensky called United Kingdom's newest sanctions on Russia an important step and calls on European Union to follow suit. Britain imposed biggest sanctions package against Russia's shadow fleet, targeting 30 vessels.
Western nations and Russia crossed swords at a chemical arms control meeting, with US saying it is appalled by Moscow's alleged use of banned riot control gas in Ukraine war.
US judge dismisses election subversion case against Donald Trump after special prosecutor requests to have the charges dropped, citing a Justice Department policy that bans prosecution of a sitting president.
Indian capital's air quality deteriorates to the severe zone after briefly improving a day prior as wind speeds drop significantly. Supreme Court suggests reopening schools, refuses to relax curbs.
Former Liverpool defender Jamie Carragher calls Mohamed Salah selfish, and this is after the Egyptian forward publicly expressed his disappointment at Red's failure to offer him a new contract. Bangladesh is witnessing a wave of protests. The capital, Dhaka, is on edge.
And this with demonstrations in different pockets by different groups and for different reasons. Here's a lowdown on this. In Dhaka, students were protesting the death of a class 12 student who, as per protesters, died after allegedly being given the wrong treatment by the hospital. Authorities have deployed military personnel after protesters broke gates and shattered glass panes at the hospital. Authorities of the DMRC college in a press conference claimed that 3 people had been killed in the clashes.
However, Dhaka Metropolitan Police said that over 100 students were injured, but nobody was killed. The situation had been simmering for a few days before it escalated to a larger unrest. On the 16th of November, an 18-year-old suffering from dengue was admitted to the Dhaka National Medical College and Hospital. 2 days later, he died. The deceased student's roommates claimed wrong treatment was given to him. On November 21st, few of the deceased's friends began protesting outside the hospital. On Sunday, the army was deployed after law and order worsened.
Bangladesh police has detained a senior priest of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, Chinmay Krishna Das Brahmachari. Das is a strong advocate of rights of the Hindu minority in the country. The detention comes amid tensions over minority rights in the country and has added fuel to fire. The Additional Commissioner Rizal Karim Malik of Dhaka Metropolitan Police's Detective Branch confirmed that Chinmay Krishna Das had been taken into custody. He was detained after a complaint.
Krishna Das has been in trouble with the law in Bangladesh earlier as well. A case was filed against him in October after he led a rally in Chittagong city. There, he was accused of disrespecting the Bangladeshi flag. Local media reports say the ISKCON priest will be handed over to the designated police station. Many supporters of Chinmay Krishna Das gathered outside Bangladesh Detective Branch office protesting his detention.
In a third incident, protesters surrounded the office of a newspaper demanding it shut down operations. Hundreds who were gathered accused the news organization of backing the Awami League during Sheikh Hasina's tenure. Security personnel were guarding the office as protesters surrounded the office and raised slogans.
Those who were accomplices of the dictator government, those who were against Bangladesh, these accomplice media include Pratham Alo, Daily Star and Kalbela. They should be closed in Bangladesh. We are still protesting peacefully. If the government doesn't listen to our demands, we will go for tougher programs.
Shifting our focus now, schools in Delhi are preparing to reopen despite pollution concerns.
The Supreme Court of India reviewed the GRAP 4 restrictions for Delhi NCR. The court refused to permit the Commission for Air Quality Management to go down to GRAP 3 or 2 measures.
The apex court said that without being satisfied of downward trend in the AQI, it cannot allow to ease the restrictions. However, court urged the Commission to consider reopening Delhi schools, citing midday meal, digital resources concerns.
Adhering to the court's direction, the Commission for Air Quality Management has relaxed the restriction on schools. The pollution watchdog has ordered that classes up to 12th standard can be conducted in a hybrid mode. Air quality in the Indian capital improved to the poor category on Monday morning. The AQI fell below the 300 mark for the first time this month. The average AQI was recorded at 285 at 9 a.m. But after a brief respite, Delhi's AQI returned to the very poor category by noon. With an AQI of 349, the city was the second most polluted, closely behind West Bengal's Durgapur, and the index rose further to 391 by 10 p.m. This morning, many of Delhi's stations crossed the 400 mark.
Currently suffering in air quality of the severe category.
The race to power has all but concluded in India's Maharashtra. The BJP-led Mahayuti alliance won a thumping mandate in the western state.
But the question now is, who will become Maharashtra's new chief minister? Two names are in contention to potentially assume the top job. BJP leader Devendra Fadnavis and Shiv Sena leader Eknath Shinde are in the running for the chief minister's post.
Earlier in the day, the Bharatiya Janata Party BJP formally approved Fadnavis' name as Maharashtra's next chief minister. As per reports, the names of Eknath Shinde and Ajit Pawar have also been agreed upon as deputy chief ministers. Shinde and Pawar and senior leaders of the Shiv Sena and NCP respectively.
However, there is no confirmation yet from any of BJP's alliance partners on the chief minister's name. For now, negotiations are ongoing among the parties of the Mahayuti alliance, not just for the top jobs but also for the distribution of seats in the state assembly, as well as ministerial positions. As per regulations, the maximum permissible limit for the Council of Ministers in Maharashtra is 43, and this includes the chief minister's post. All right, before we go on any further, at least one police officer was killed, 119 people wounded in Pakistan on Monday. This is supporters of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan clashed with the forces while trying to enter Islamabad.
This is in response to the call for a march on Parliament for a sit-in demonstration by the PTI supporters. Islamabad is under lockdown for the past 2 days. Highways to the city have been barricaded. Major roads have been blocked with shipping containers. Local TV footage even showed from last night, it showed police firing tear gas canisters at Khan's supporters who were pelting them with stones and bricks.
Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi said the security forces showed extreme restraint in confronting the protesters, some of whom he said had fired live rounds, while police only used rubber bullets and fired tear gas canisters. But Khan's party has accused the government of using excessive violence to block the protesters and said that hundreds of workers and leaders had been arrested.
Naqvi said the government had offered Khan's party permission to hold a sit-in protest at an open field on Islamabad's outskirts, adding that the party leaders took this offer to Khan at his prison cell, but they haven't yet heard on it. Naqvi cleared that the protesters will not be allowed to reach outside Parliament, warning that the government will be forced to use extreme steps if they did not budge.
However, hours thereafter, reports emerged that Bushra Bibi, Imran Khan's wife, had started for D Chowk. She insisted on progressing, claiming that the party workers are not willing to compromise on any settlement that does not include reaching D Chowk.
According to sources cited in the reports, Khan had agreed to an alternative location, but Bibi refused it. However, a breakthrough is likely to occur in the negotiation between the PTI and federal government, as Khan has accepted one of the proposals put forward by the regime, according to sources.
Meanwhile, the government has bolstered security in view of the arrival of the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, who is going to be on a 3-day visit to the country. As you can see, these are the visuals of him in Pakistan. All right, so this is where things stand at the moment. The PTI convoy has converged on Islamabad, their demand being that they reach D Chowk. That is what Bushra Bibi has claimed, that that's the end goal. At least one police officer was killed as supporters of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan clashed with the forces on the outskirts of Islamabad, and this was in response to the call for a march on the parliament for a sit-in demonstration. As of now, Islamabad is under lockdown. Highways to the major city have been barricaded, major roads blocked with shipping containers. For more on this, we're now being joined by Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik. Anas, thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us of the situation at the moment?
Well, at least 5 security personnel are dead now as we speak. That includes 4 personnel from the paramilitary, that is the Rangers, and 1 person from the police. And as a reason of which the military has now been called in under Article 245A, that basically calls in for action in aid of the civil government to control the law and order situation, which seemingly is getting out of hands for the government. Last night, in a late night presser, in a rather rare late night presser, Mohsen Naqvi, the interior minister, said, and I quote, that the government will do all what it takes to ensure that the law and order situation gets back to normalcy, be even imposing a curfew, calling the military, or firing bullets. They will do all what they have to do in order to control the situation in case red lines are crossed. I was there at the press conference by Mohsen Naqvi. It was a late night presser, and after this presser, we see that seemingly the government has indeed caved in, and they've accepted loss on their part, that they have failed to control protesters. As a measure of which, now they have called in the military and invoked Article 245A for the deployment of the military. There are also reports, and these are claims by security sources, which are yet to be confirmed or denied by the government or government sources on their part. I understand it's a bit early in Pakistan. The reason we're yet to hear back from the government sources, but what we know is that security sources claim that the government has authorized them to shoot to kill any protester, any miscreant, not a protester, in fact, a miscreant, pardon me on that, those who are involved in acts of terrorizing, those who are involved in acts of ransacking, they will be shot. And that's what security sources are claiming. As I said, this is a claim which has not yet been verified. But what we know so far is that security sources say that the military has indeed been called in continuation to what the interior minister said late last night, that the military has indeed been called in for action in aid of the civil government. Shivan?
Anas, do you feel the PTI will agree to this offer made by the government, that they've offered for the protest to be carried out at Sangjani in the outskirts of Islamabad, because as per at least the latest reports that I've found, that the PTI, the government is awaiting the PTI's response. Do you feel, or will they continue going towards their initial aim, that is Islamabad? Because we also need to take into account that Alexander Lukashenko is there in Pakistan. So they need to, the government has to be extremely cautious at this point to not allow any kind of unrest to go out of control.
We have to understand one thing. While the PTI would ideally want to take the government's offer, they're right now not in charge. That is the problem. You have to understand, this is a charged crowd of 25,000, 30,000 people who are visibly headless or leaderless. PTI has for years been Imran Khan. And for the past 600 or 500 odd days since Imran Khan is in prison, since 14 months or so, PTI continues to remain headless. So this is a matter of survival and acceptance of the local leadership, which is PTI minus Imran Khan, for their acceptance within the party infrastructure, within the party workers. Remember, 3 of their calls have also been called off, particularly despite of having them being, final calls. So it's a matter of survival and acceptance for the PTI leadership. The reason, even if they would want to, it would not be an easy ride out. The reason we saw or heard reports late last night with that when Barrister Gohar had that rare late in the last night meeting with Imran Khan at the Adiala jail, reports did emerge that Barrister Gohar did manage to secure some sort of a video message from Imran Khan himself, though the reports were later denied. But you have to understand that it's not what the current PTI leadership that's out on the roads or is not incarcerated has to say, because if they say anything, they will come out across as weak, as compromised, and the workers will not be willing to accept what they have to say. The reason Imran Khan's word and his acceptance really matters a lot at this point of time. Shivan?
All right, well, Anas, thank you so much for bringing us the latest on this. We're, of course, going to be tracking the developments on this front very closely. Thank you so much for bringing us the latest for now, at least.
President-elect Donald Trump has announced plans to impose sweeping tariffs on imports from China, Mexico and Canada, citing the need to combat illegal drugs and migration.
Trump proposed a 10% tariff on all goods from China and a 25% tariff on products from Mexico and Canada. These measures, he said, will remain in effect until drug trafficking and illegal immigration across U.S. borders are stopped. Trump linked the move to his broader agenda of using trade policy to address domestic security challenges. Financial markets reacted immediately, with the Mexican peso falling over 1%, the Canadian dollar dropping 0.5%, and China's offshore yuan edging lower.
In a series of posts on his Truth Social platform, Trump claimed that China failed to implement its promise to introduce the death penalty for fentanyl traffickers, which he says has allowed record levels of drugs to pour into the US. Trump also emphasized that thousands of illegal migrants and drugs are coming into the country through Mexico and Canada, calling it an invasion. His announcement comes just days after naming Scott Bessent as the next Treasury Secretary, a move seen by some as an effort to moderate these aggressive tariff plans. However, markets remain on edge.
Mexico and Canada are yet to respond officially, while traders have already shown concerns through currency fluctuations. Trump's imposed tariffs build on his campaign pledge to use trade levies as a tool to achieve policy goals. His earlier proposals included a 60% tariff on Chinese imports and a 20% levy on goods from other countries to pressure manufacturers into relocating jobs back to the US. Critics argue that these measures could strain relations with key allies and adversaries alike, while risking higher consumer costs and supply chain disruptions. Proponents, however, see it as a necessary step to address drug trafficking and protect American borders. With Trump's inauguration weeks away, businesses and governments are bracing for a potential shift in US trade policy. All right, on to developments now from the world of technology. According to a report by Howden Group Holdings, a UK-based insurance broker, cyber attacks have cost British businesses around $55 billion in lost revenue in the past 5 years, with 52% of private sector companies reporting at least one attack during the same period. As per the report, cyber attacks cost businesses 1.9% of their revenue on average. Companies generating an annual revenue of over £100 million are most likely to suffer an attack. Additionally, compromised emails and data theft are the most common forms of cyber attack. Meanwhile, only 61% of businesses were found to be using antivirus software and a firewall.
As the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh gets ready to host the 2025 Mahakumbh, the state police have announced the implementation of AI-based surveillance technology to improve crowd management and ensure the safety and security of devotees. The aim is to tackle the logistical challenges of managing millions of pilgrims who gather for the world's largest religious congregation. It is estimated that around 400 million pilgrims will be visiting the Mahakumbh next year. This is where the state police believe AI will come in handy. The AI surveillance will be used to track the movement of people and vehicles, detect and identify suspicious behavior and optimize resource deployment. The Mahakumbh will begin on the 13th of January 2025 and will conclude on the last holy bath on February 26th.
China recently hosted its first edition of the Low Altitude Economy Expo from November 23rd to 25th. On display were more than 500 aircraft, including drones and helicopters. Meanwhile, it was not just aircraft. The attendees also witnessed smart navigation systems, aviation chairbacks and fully transparent windshields, among other new technologies at the expo. Raw materials and parts for general aviation equipment that showcased the development of the low altitude economy in recent years were also on display.
All right, let's now shift focus to sports. Former Liverpool defender Jamie Carragher has said that Mohamed Salah is selfish for publicly expressing his disappointment.
There will be an 11th team in the Formula One from the